All right, finally, it's been a long time, man. This just looking forward to this interview, kind of an up close and personal Marc Spivey. Those of you that are viewing this is Taylor Spivey's father, and we're gonna kind of go down some memory lane from a father's perspective. And these shirts are going to mean a little more as we go through this interview. So I'm kind of celebrating his daughter Taylor's going to Paris. Yeah, 2000 coming up. So this month, and so we're like rooting her on, and so we're talking a little bit more about why we're wearing these shirts. So, Marc, thanks for just taking the time to be able to share a little bit more of just your life and as well as just the backstory on what you're feeling like being a father. So welcome, man.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Brian. I feel honored and humbled, and certainly happy to share what I can about my my relationship with my daughter and her pathway to the Olympics and anything in between. So it's great to chat with you and maybe share something that might be helpful to future parents of athletes. And
Yep, yep. And that's where, one of the reasons of this is that not only about celebrating your daughter's success of going to the Olympics, this dream coming true, but also from a parent perspective, just also that we might also kind of see how much our role, our influence as parents, the foundation, the formation of our kids' lives, and it takes it takes a whole family dynamic, the support system, all of those things that lay groundwork. And so these are some of the things I'd like to kind of unpack because there's a lot of inspiration that can come out of that. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to go to a shared screen. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint presentation here. Tell me if you can see it. Can you see it?
I can.
Okay, so I'm going to start first of all. We can see you on this corner here, but just titled this as Marc Spivey, a proud father's perspective of an Olympian, your daughter Taylor Spivey. So this is going to be forever etched in history. You have an Olympian, man, and so I am. As I've been, seeing your Facebook posts and the proud dad, and I just know what it's like to be a proud dad, and I just like what you are experiencing is such a rare, I mean, it's just a rare opportunity that parents can experience. And so I'm so proud for you, just as I kind of watch, vicariously kind of see through your eyes. And that's where I'm kind of inspired, would like to know, what your journey is in this process. And so, first of all, just kind of let's go a little bit into just some of our little bit of backstory, how we know each other. Uh, you know, gosh, it goes back. There's some things I just kind of don't remember all the details, but I remember that picture in the left corner. That was at Bob Evans' house, right? It was a fleet.
Bob
Yeah,
Evans' house in Playa del Rey, I think, right?
yep. And so we're getting together because we're going to go to Ironman Canada. This was in August of '89, and if do you remember Eugene Cordero? His back is turned. Do you remember him? Did you ever?
Wow. Um, the name
Right?
sounds familiar, but I'm
No.
drawing a little bit of a
Yeah.
blank.
Yeah, he and I always used to train together on cycling, especially, and so I just remember I forgot his name, and I looked at him. Oh yeah, Eugene. But I remember this back. The people that were there, Pam, right? Pam Haskell.
Now Haskell.
Yep, and then what was it? The South African. What was his name?
Ron Edwards. He's still a friend of mine.
Yeah, I just saw a recent post, And they're married, right? And that was his girlfriend at the time?
Yeah, Kim, they're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really long, but yeah, that was his wife at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And so, anyways, so this was us. We're getting ready to go to Canada, and then 32 years later, a couple years ago, we got in touch and went on a little bike ride, and it was like a complete blast from the past. And so it
Yeah,
was,
yeah, it was a real fun day. I remember it vividly.
yeah. And so then just this one particular picture I saw you for some reason. I forget where I found it in one of your posts, but I forgot all about this. And this had to have been after Canada because I see my Canada Ironman visor there. But
Right.
where was this? I don't remember.
Well, that's out in Palm Springs. They had a triathlon out there, and that was the Sport Rock Tri Club that
Yeah,
we started, and that's where I met a lot of the people in that picture. And see, a lot of familiar faces,
yeah,
and yeah, that was like one of the first triathlon clubs in the definitely the first one in the South Bay, but
yeah,
triathlon is still relatively new, and we put together this club in connection with a bicycle shop in Manhattan Beach called Sport Rock.
yep. That was it Jan Bass, right?
Jan Bass, that's
Yeah,
it.
this is not Jan Bass, right? I forget
No, that's Mike Roberts, who
okay.
sadly passed away. He was one of my heroes. He was an extremely talented athlete. He did so many marathons, and I used to travel to triathlons with him and race up and down the coast. And he was an attorney
Mhm.
and lived locally. Just a great guy. Just a
Yeah.
great.
Okay, so kind of emphasizing kind of what's going on in this era of your life. Uh, Kind of give us a little back. What was happening? What was in your life at that time in triathlon, and kind of give us a little backstory of you.
Yeah. So I came into triathlons around 1987, 88,
Mhm.
and I really had a dramatic lifestyle change coming out of college. I struggled with some issues, and candidly, I had a drinking and drug problem, and I ended up getting treatment, and I got sober. And when I first got sober, I weighed 230 pounds, and I started running, and I set a goal to run a 10K, and I did that, and then I set a goal to run a marathon, and my first marathon was Big Sur Marathon 1987.
Mhm.
And it was at that time I decided that I wanted to do a triathlon, and I decided that I really wanted to do an Ironman. And
Mhm.
I started to put myself on that pathway to start training for Ironman triathlon.
And here you are, Ironman. So now, was Canada your first Ironman?
Canada 1989 was my first Ironman triathlon. Yes.
Okay. And I do want to emphasize because I know Lynn Van Dove, the founder of Ironman Canada, she's going to be watching this. And if you remember, she sent me a lot of memorabilia, loaned it to me. But if you remember, this was our 1989 Ironman Canada
Uh, I
athletes guide, man.
think I still have that somewhere.
Yeah.
Lots of results and little trophies,
Yep.
and I
19,
know that's in there somewhere. Oh wow, you've
yep.
got very nice.
Yeah, and so if you remember, so just then Ray Browning, remember this year? Ray Browning, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I have this whole box full of things that she loaned me, and that we're going to be doing co-hosting something on this. But anyway, so this whole thing, so that then you qualified for what did you qualify at Ironman the '89 for Kona?
I did. I did the Canadian Ironman 1989,
Hmm.
and then 1990. I did not race a triath. I did not race an Ironman, and
Here's 90 here.
that's when Taylor's mom was pregnant with Taylor.
Oh, okay.
She ended up
Okay.
doing the 1990 Canadian Ironman, but she dropped out before the run because she was pregnant.
Oh,
So,
okay. Got it.
and
Hmm.
then I came back to triathlons. Well, I beg your pardon. I did run. I did do the Ironman in 1990.
Yeah, because the picture right
I
here.
stand corrected. I
Yeah.
stand corrected. Okay, so in 1990, I did the. Let's see. I apologize. I haven't thought about this in a long time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, okay, so in '90, I went to Japan and I did the Japan
Oh,
Ironman.
okay.
I qualified for Hawaii at Japan in 1990, and then
Oh,
I went. I did Kona in 1990.
yeah. And so remember there was only five Ironmans at them. Japan, New Zealand, Canada, Germany, or East Germany, West Germany at the time,
Yeah,
and
there
then
were.
Kona, Hawaii. Remember
Yes,
that?
I went all the way to Japan to qualify, which was a great race and a great experience to stay with a host family. And
Wow. I saw a
uh,
picture of that.
yeah.
Yep. And then now, then currently you're still a cyclist. So then what happened from the transition to triathlon and then your emphasis on cycling?
So I came to triathlons in about 1988, 1989, and I continued with them through Ironman in 92, and I continued beyond that. I didn't do any more Ironman races for a while. Taylor had been born, and I was married with a family and focused on my career. And then in about 1995 or 96, I did come back to triathlons and focused on shorter sprint races. And I got third in the national sprint championships in my age group one year in
Hmm.
Newport. And I could pretty much place in the top three in my age group up and down the coast. Listen, I was never great, but I was pretty good at all three disciplines, so I could usually place pretty well. And then I kind of stepped away from triathlons. I had done a wildflower triathlon multiple times, and it was always a really difficult race. And I had a bad race one year. I had a great bike and the run. I I I bonked and I felt terrible. And I that was my last triathlon. That was a long time ago. And
Wow.
I kind of set aside competing in events for a while. I did become a Johnny G certified spin instructor, cycle Reebok instructor, and I was a spin instructor for a while.
Huh.
And then about let's see, about 15 years ago, I decided I wanted to try my hand at cyclocross racing, and I ended up getting a local guy to coach me, and then I had no cycling license, so then I had to go and hop into crits locally to get my cycling license. Get out of Cat 5 and finish 10 races upright, and I started to embrace road cycling. And we got down where I went for touring racing and some road racing, and then also some time trialing. And I began to really enjoy that. And so I joined a local cycling club team, and I started racing. I went from a Cat 5 to Cat 4 to Cat 3, and I started doing pretty well. I have won a road race. I have won a crit, and it's pretty hard in this area to do those, so I'm pretty proud of that.
Wow.
And and then I was on a couple of masters team time trial teams. We won the state championship, and then I even got into the velodrome. And for a few years, I did the velodrome, and we won the state championship as a team pursuit. And then we went to Masters Nationals, and we got a bronze medal on the track at Rock Hill, South Carolina. So I played around with that.
Wow.
And then a few years ago, I just kind of backed off on the racing. I did a lot of races, bike races.
Hmm. Hmm.
Wasn't swimming or running. I was just cycling, and I really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And cycling has still remained a big part of my life and my discipline, my routine. It's my outlet, and I'm still doing it. So I have gravel bikes, I got mountain bikes, I've got road bikes, time trial bikes. So
Mhm. And then just recently, I saw you did this legacy
it's,
triathlon
it's
this month.
yesterday.
This weekend? Was it this weekend?
It was yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay, yeah.
You know,
So yeah, so what motivated you to do this? I mean, what happened, man?
I have a friend, a good friend, who puts together corporate relay teams, in particular for Malibu, and a few years ago, and he asked me to be part of his team, and I assumed he wanted me to be the runner. And he goes, "No, I want you to swim." And I said, "Swim?" I go, I can't remember last time I swam. So, but he's just a dear friend, and I said, "You know what, Bill, I'll do that for you." And so a few years ago, I got back in the pool,
Uh,
and I want to make sure I could still swim, and I got some. It comes back to you. I mean, the technique comes back to you. Obviously, the endurance is the part that you really have to work on conditioning.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so for a couple of years, I did the swim for him in these fun, no pressure uh, corporate relay triathlons, and it was a lot of fun. And
Olympic, Olympic, I said.
they were Olympic, yeah. And
Yeah.
and so this year, Malibu was canceled, so they moved the corporate because of some construction or something, and so they moved the corporate relay to this race in Long Beach. And then he said, "Can you swim this year, and can you also bike? I'm having problems finding people."
Oh God.
Yesterday, I did I participated in and I did the swim and the bike for my team, and another person did the run.
Wow.
And so yeah, and so I saw a couple of my friends out there. Two of them you're showing pictures of here. Uh,
Hmm.
one of them to the right, that's Sean Richardson next to the Long Beach sign. He's the brother of Tony Richardson, who was a legend back in the day with the era of Marc Allen and Scott Tinley and Dave Scott.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and Sean is one of my riding buddies on the weekend, and he has won national championships in his age group multiple times. He won his age group yesterday. He was 13th overall, and he's in his 60s, so he's a real tough guy. The other guy right here, Rick Crump, he's organized triathlons and open water swims here in the South Bay, and I used to compete with him in triathlons, and
Mm,
he's out there working the event. And I ran
wow.
across him and said
Yeah.
hi. And he has a T-shirt too, by the way.
All right. Cool, man. So this is going to be the course for the LA 2028, right?
I think this is going to be the footprint for the race. There was actually Taylor and I had actually met with the mayor of Redondo Beach to see about bringing the triathlon to Redondo along
Really?
with open water swim event.
Mhm.
But it's a complex dynamic with the Olympics, and you can have only so many footprints in terms of logistics, in terms of security, in terms of budget, in terms of manpower, and there's politics involved. And so right now, Long Beach is going to host those two events. I'm sure they're probably going to host some other events. I don't know if crew or something like that, but that's generally where the race is going to be. I suspect that they will tweak the course. And one of the things you do when you get an Olympic event is you have to have the race on that course at least once before they actually do have
Mm.
the Olympics. So this is kind of the footprint. I think they're kind of fine tuning some of this stuff. I can't imagine they'd have the same running course that we were on yesterday. It was they might move it, but keep it kind of near that same footprint.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. All right. So let's go into just kind of more on the kind of some Taylor's upbringing and background. So picture you want to expound on any of this here?
Uh, yeah, Taylor was born to two athletes, and her mother is still a swim instructor, and of course she was a triathlete at the time. and swimming was a big part and still is, the biggest part of her mother's life. And so Taylor was introduced to swimming very early on. I mean, we had a house, I remember when she was just a little baby. And so she was introduced to the water at a very early age.
Yeah. And so now this Christmas tree here, and you have this the swim fins
Yeah,
and
yeah. So that's her first Christmas. She's just she was born in April, so she's only like what, 8 months older. So
yeah. So Bonnie was like really wanting to, I mean, that was her focus is that we got to teach her to swim.
it was. She's also a swim instructor. So her mom was very keen on Taylor swimming. So
Yeah.
so she was introduced to that at an early age, and she took to it, and she started swimming in structured swim programs when she was very young. Yeah.
Yeah, and something to emphasize too, the in terms of the pedigree that comes from both of you and her mom, that Bonnie, she at Ironman Canada 1989, she came out third in the water overall after Chris Hinshaw and I forget who the other guy was, and then she's third out of the water, and you see that you can Google her on the 1989 Canada Ironman and the ESPN and all that, and so uh, definitely made. I think it was like a world record at that time, and so definitely.
He held the Ironman swim record for some time. So the background on Bonnie Taylor's mom was she's Canadian, and she moved down to Southern California, and she had a very strong swimming background, and she started uh, dipping her toe into competitive triathlons. And back then we had the Bud Light USTS series, and she joined the team NTTC
Yep.
uh, by Mark Windley and Tom Peters, and she competed as a pro on the Bud Light USTS circuit. And then she also did Ironman races, and I met her at Ironman Canada in 1989. So that's where we met.
Yep. And so yeah, that was that race that we went together, and and then that the month prior, I was in that NTTC camp, Mark Winley's camp, Tom Peters. It was at UC Irvine, and then Chris Hinshaw and Ray Browning. They were like the faculty and doing the seminars and all that. And so it's kind of pretty cool to just kind of like be with them and hang out with the pros. And the time, it's like, yeah, we knew they were the pros, but it was some kind of a sense of community in that 3-day camp, 2-day camp. And then, that a couple of weeks later, we go to Canada, and it's like, wow, seeing it all in action. And it was pretty cool. Just the organic season, the organic era back then, and here was a significant milestone. And so, like I mentioned later, that Lynn Van Dove, founder of Ironman Canada, whole backstory, won't get into that, but we're going to be, we became friends, and we're going to co-host and talk about the history of Ironman Canada and go all the way back into from the Lynn, Valerie Silk days to the beginnings to going international in Japan, and there's so many connections that she's going to bring in a lot of guests and pros and it'll be a fun thing for the age groupers as ourselves. I think we'll appreciate it. It'll take us back to memory lane. But anyways,
Canada it's I don't have to tell you, it was a great place to hold an event like that, and such a great, warm and welcoming community.
yeah,
The lake, Penticton Lake, was a pretty neat body of water.
yeah,
The Okanagan Valley was a beautiful place, and then that bike used to go up Richter Pass, which was a real.
yeah. That was a challenging course there. But okay, so let's move forward, and we have here picture of your mom and your wife, Shannon, right? And this is just home in Redondo Beach. Yep.
Yeah, well, a couple of those are pictures that my mom lives in assisted living, and that's we're visiting her, and Taylor always comes and visits her. She's very they're both very close to each other, and Taylor is their only grandchild, and they have a really good special relationship. Um, and then that's a picture of my wife with Taylor and I, my wife Shannon, in Montreal. We went and watched her race there. That was just this last year. And then there's a picture of Taylor and I kissing my mom.
All right. And so, now this whole context of us, talking about just from a father's perspective, it's something that's a very special moment in time right now. And so this picture here, she tell us about what happened. How did the news, how did you find out or confirm? And tell us the backstory from a father's perspective, what you felt, and give us
Sure.
some.
Well, I think I need to kind of frame it in a certain context. Uh, I know triathlons. I did triathlons, so I certainly have maybe a little bit more focused perspective as a parent on the sport. So I was a little bit more invested in this, and just kind of taking it back a little bit further. Uh, I never encourage. I would support her in any athletic endeavor that she chose to partake in, and it was always swimming. She was a great swimmer. She was a very good student, and so the swimming pathway was, a big part of her life, and she was good at it. And so she didn't really get funds until she was in college, and then she ended up. I don't know how much you want me to go into detail there, but she's been on a pathway. She's been a pro for 10 years, so this isn't overnight. And she's raced in 85 to 100 world class races, and so I watch every single race she does, no matter what time of the night it's on, because all of her races are in different parts of the world. So I've always had a really good, keen understanding of how she fit into that dynamic, and she was very cutting to where we are right now. She's very deserving of this selection to the team for this Olympics. And yeah, it was a very exciting moment when she got the formal selection. Absolutely, because she was an alternate for the Tokyo Olympics, and she deserved that. COVID kind of screwed up how the selection process went. And then not only did she not get the selection for Tokyo, but she was asked to go as an alternate. And because it was during the pandemic, she had to go to Tokyo and sit in a hotel room and not even interact with anyone the whole time she was there.
Wow.
So
Wow.
this was a much better scenario for her to be at the Olympics with, the world opened up again and it being in Paris. So,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. We'll get more into that near the end of
okay.
the but so these early years of swimmer in the making, and so kind of tell us now from the formation, the backstory of just
Well, I
you.
think it helps to have maybe give some background about my relationship with my parents because it does influence my approach to parenting to Taylor. I came from a broken home. My parents separated when I was 8, divorced when I was 10, and I had an unavailable father, and I was not athletically inclined. I didn't have a father that was like showing me how to, catch a baseball or swing a bat or throw a football. So I early on in my life, I did not really have any kind of mentor when it came to sports. And eventually I did pick up surfing and tennis. And I did actually end up playing some tennis with my father, which was a nice bonding experience.
Mhm.
But when Taylor's mom and I, we only had one thing in common, and that was sports. And that quickly became apparent in our relationship. So after Taylor was born, we ended up separating, when Taylor was 4 and divorced when she was 5. So here I'm introducing my own child into a broken home dynamic.
Mm.
And so that kind of influenced me in a way because I wanted to make sure that her experience with a broken home was different than mine. So I was a very available parent and maybe a little hyper vigilant, but it's where I was coming from. And I was very supportive and always there for her. And she she embraced that and she got comfortable with the two house dynamic. And swimming was a big part with her mom. And I said, look, you do whatever sports you want, and I will support you. If you don't want to do sports, that's fine too. I mean, she played violin and piano for a while, and she's a good artist. But she played soccer. She experimented with volleyball. It's a very athletic community here in Southern California. And then here she is, little girl, and I took her to with me when I still was competing in triathlons. So she got introduced to triathlons, and she saw that I did these, but I I never forced or even directed her into that pathway of triathlons, but she was aware of it certainly,
Hmm.
and she was always around athletic cultures. And then when she was very young, I put her in the baby jogger, and I mean when she was tiny, I was running her around in the baby jogger, and she had that experience.
Yeah.
Uh, and then she, as a youth here, they have the junior lifeguard program run by the LA County Lifeguards, and she was in that program every summer for 5 years, and she excelled at that. She was
Mhm.
a very competitive young lady, and she would be very focused and determined at whatever she set her mind on. She's a very uh, somewhat self-actualized person, and is that an influence of me? I, I don't know, but I certainly did everything I could to support her in whatever direction or pathway she felt that she wanted to go in.
Mhm.
And here I coached her AYSO soccer teams, and this particular team is kind of special because one of the girls, the tall girl in the background, that's Alex Kleinman, and she was the Olympic beach volleyball gold medalist at the last Olympics. So it's
Hmm.
kind of you got two Olympians in this picture on the soccer team.
Wow, wow. Is this in Manhattan Beach or Redondo?
That's Manhattan Beach. Yep. And the
Mhm.
guy next to me in the upper right hand corner is Greg Geiser. I still bike with him 3 times a week and have been for 20 years.
Wow, pretty cool, man. Yeah, I miss not growing, I mean not living the adult life. I mean, I moved from California when I was 35. I lived my whole life there, but 35, then moved to the East Coast. But I admire those that you just stick around your town and keep in touch with all your friends and stay connected and stuff.
I
And
was looking at my picture. I didn't realize the sun was that bright in me. That
yep,
kind of changed that a little.
then yep. And then this season, this stage here.
Yeah, Taylor. I certainly got Taylor a bike, and she had a lot of fun as a kid. She was a happy child. She was a very happy child.
Yeah.
And this was a little parade, and we decorated her bike, and that's Manhattan Beach. That looks like Pacific Elementary School where she went to school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and then she was in competitive swimming at a very early age, and she embraced that. And I went to countless swim meets when she was a girl, and she was very consistent. She's petite though, and swimming in a pool, being taller is absolutely an advantage because you're always going to get the touch on the wall first, and over time those touches add up. And so she was petite, so she was good in the pool. She was varsity as a freshman in high school, but she wasn't as fast as some of the fastest girls. But put her in the open water, and it's a whole different story.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and she did play around a little bit with running, and she won a medal in a race there.
Mhm.
And then she also did paddling. She was a paddleboard champion,
Mhm.
junior lifeguards, and so that's a picture of her after one of the events. Yeah, in Hermosa Beach, and then she competed in some of the junior lifeguard competitions, and she embraced that, and she had fun with it, and I supported her, and I would go to all of her events, and yeah, it was just it was a really neat um, part of her world and our world.
So
Uh,
she gravitated more than towards swimming was her main
it
route.
was primarily swimming. We did other sports. She was a snowboarder. We had season passes to Mammoth, but when she got into high school, she had to do water polo if she wanted to be on the swim team. And so the water polo season was before the swim team, and it's in December. And she had to go to water polo practice, and so that kind of ruined our winter skiing trips because
Mhm.
all of a sudden the water polo became a priority.
Mhm. Yep.
All the way through high school, and she was always on varsity, and then the junior lifeguard program um, has a cadet program. So for 2 years, you have to be interviewed and accepted into the cadet program. So she was a big part of that. That was a big part of her life. She became a junior lifeguard. She became a cadet for 2 years, and then she did the tryout to be an LA County lifeguard, and she became an LA County lifeguard before she even turned 18.
Hmm.
And she's a standout um, lifeguard too. And she finished at the top of the class, and she got an award. And then she got into life-saving competition. She became a junior lifeguard instructor, and
Wow.
yeah, she had a good time with that.
Oh, cool, man. Wow.
And that's her competing in Japan. They would send a team to compete against Japan each summer, and she was always on the U.S. team.
Hmm. Wow. So you're traveling with her all these different places and stuff?
I didn't know she went. There were no parents on that trip. She went. She went with the team, with
Cool.
the LA County lifeguard team.
Wow. Water polo, right?
That's her water polo at Miracosta,
Mhm.
her high school. She went to Australia and competed in the World Life Saving Championships one year for the U.S. And that's her there.
Mhm. And then now
Yeah.
tra-
So, like I said, she took up triathlons late, and the thing you have to understand is there is sort of a system, the scouting system, to find the next good triathletes, and they're looking for swimmers who are also cross country runners, collegiate cross country swimmer and runners.
yeah.
And their strategy is then they can teach them the bike. But if you don't have that swimming background, and typically if you don't have a good running background, you're probably not a good candidate to be an elite triathlete. So
Mm.
Taylor came into that program. She won a junior nationals. She podiumed at junior nationals at like her second triathlon she ever did, and then she started going and participating with the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo uh, triathlon team. And I just want to digress a bit. When she went to college, my focus for her was always academics. She was a standout student, and she wanted to pursue architecture. She's unique in that she has really good spatial aptitude for a girl, and mostly it's a trait that's found more prevalent in men. That's why there's more male architects. But she had really good spatial aptitude. She's very artistic. She's really good. And so we went up to San Luis Obispo, which has probably one of the finest architecture schools in the country, and we checked it out. And she also got accepted to several other schools, including Berkeley and USC. And
Mm.
we went and met with the swim coach at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I was with her. We were touring schools, and we made an appointment to meet with him, and that's a Division I school. She wasn't good enough to get a scholarship there, but she still wanted to swim. She wanted to swim as a walk-on. So we go and we meet with this guy, the coach, and he asked some questions. He was not the most friendly guy, and then when he asked her what her major was, and she said, I'm an architect major. And he goes, oh, well, I'll only see you the first year, and you'll never be back on the swim team.
Huh.
And I thought that was kind of a bold thing to say, and kind of unexpected. And she, like she's always done so many times, she proved him wrong. She swam. It was a 5-year undergrad program for architecture at San Luis Obispo. And year 4, you go abroad. She spent a year in Florence, where she actually did some swimming competitions and some other races. She even won an open water swimming competition there. But she swam all 4 years with him, and she, in a way, she kind of proved him wrong. But she got into triathlons late in her college career, and then when she got out of college, the USA Triathlon wanted to consider her for this program they have called the Collegiate Recruitment Development Training Program, CRP. And she ended up getting accepted into that. And I said, listen, I think you should pursue this and see how far you can take it. But the great unknown was whether or not she could develop into a good runner, because you have to be pretty much a world-class runner to compete at the elite level in triathlons. So she got into their program. They assigned a great coach to her. And then she went to this race in Manson, Washington, to see if she could qualify to get her quote unquote pro card. And my wife Shannon and I went up there to watch and support her. And she ended up coming out of the water first. Now, mind you, this is a draft legal race. She came out of the water first, and she took off on the bike and just rode away from everyone. And then she stayed away from everyone on the run. So she won that first race to get her pro card going away. It was pretty remarkable. Wow. And from there, she continued to explore and see if she could compete at that elite level. And so she, once you get in that system, you have to, there's 3 levels of racing. There's continental races, World Cup races, and then World Triathlon Series. And she stayed very committed to this pathway. And I never discouraged her, because I could see that she was performing up to a level where she should still continue doing it. And she's just a remarkably dedicated athlete, and she's a very coachable athlete. And she ended up developing into a really good runner. And I certainly did what I could to help her with the bike, because I really had a good bike background in my life. And she ultimately relocated to Europe to train with an elite coach. And, she's been living in Europe for the last 7 or 8 years. And that's her home base. And she's really stuck with it. And obviously the results are born into why we're having this conversation right now. So
now, Marc, where she was so she started getting into triathlon while she was still in college studying architecture?
Still in college.
Okay. And so she dabbled in it. She saw. Then how did USAT discover her? How did that all happen?
They have, for lack of a better word, scouts. They need the next generation of triathletes to develop into their team, their Team USA. And because she podiumed at a national age group event, they reached out. And I was equally surprised. I didn't really know that she was playing around with triathlons, because mind you, she's already in college.
Yeah.
And she called me and she said, Dad, this this coach is calling me, and he wants to coach me.
Hmm.
And his name's Greg Mueller. You can look him up. He's a great coach. He's a great guy, and he's still coaching athletes. I think he might even be in Paris this year. I think he was quoted. He coached a Paralympic athlete who is competing in Paris this year. But when she told me he's in South Bend, Indiana, I told her, I go, I could find you a triathlon coach here in Southern California. Why do you need a triathlon coach in South Bend, Indiana? That's kind of crazy. But I talked with him too, and I realized he's part of this. He's a USA Triathlon certified coach. He's one of the coaches that they use in their collegiate recruitment development training program. And so I said, sure, go for it. Just make sure she was still in college when this was kind of going on. I said, make sure you graduate and get your degree, because she had to kind of delay her actual last class, and a lot of it had to do with studying a year abroad. But she did. She graduated with honors, and I'm equally proud of that as I am with her where she's at right now with her athletics, because I really reinforce, and I think this is something as a parent I can tell you, is at some point it will become clear and apparent of whether or not a pathway to a professional world elite class level of athleticism is unrealistic. And I was very adamant through this whole process with my daughter that if at some point I saw that there was diminished returns, that you peaked, you're not going to get any further, and it's really time to kind of reevaluate some things in your life. And her, with this tremendous academic background and a true talent with graphics and design and architecture, that if it came to a point where she was never going to make it to that top 50 triathletes in the world, then I would have really encouraged her to reconsider, because I've seen too many athletes who are chasing this dream, or parents that push them on a pathway that is completely unrealistic, unfair and unrealistic. But the amazing thing with Taylor is it's never been that way. I've if anything, she continues to outperform. And there's never been a time where I said, you need to take a pause, and kind of reevaluate your direction.
So then was there a matter of when she decided to say, I'm going to give it a try, go through this development program and go pro, and then was she now focused on that? She knew she got her degree and get that, but now delay any career focus and just let's now give it a try. Was that the decision?
Right. And just to, first of all, triathlons in the US and this level of racing she's at, it's kind of an eclectic niche. And then to compete in the type of racing structure that all leads to this pathway to World Triathlon Series it's very structured. There's not a lot of racing. There's a lot of traveling. And so if you do receive the blessings of Team USA, they have 3 different tiers of funding: bronze, silver, and gold. And so there's certainly an economic financial component to doing this too. But she started out at that level of bronze, and you start racing at some of the lower tier races, and to acquire points. This is all about ranking and points. And so there's continental races here in the US and down into Central America. And so she started racing those, and she did well, and she was performing. So eventually you move up the ranking, and you move up into the tier system within Team USA. And then she gradually got more funding, and she continued to consistently perform. to the point where she reached that gold level of funding. But most of those races, there are no races in the World Triathlon Series in the United States. There was once upon a time, there was Chicago, I think. But so all of this racing that she does is everywhere but North America. There is a race in Montreal still. And so she ultimately aligned herself with several of these coaches that coach all of the elite athletes that race and compete at that World Triathlon Series level. And so she's had the same coach for a number of years, Paulo Souza. He's Portuguese, but I think he went to college in America. He's more of an engineer than anything, but he's been a good coach for her. So he coaches a squad of athletes, and they move all over the world and train together. And so she's training against athletes that she also competes against. And so she relocated to Girona, which is north of Barcelona, and that's been her home base for, I'm going to say, 7 or 8 years now. It's been a while. And then she also does, she's based in Portugal sometimes. And then she just spent the last few weeks at altitude camp in France. She spends a lot of time training in France. And then sometimes if she does come to North America, she might be in Flagstaff training at altitude. So it's usually altitude camps are very important. So she'll spend a lot of time there.
Yeah, okay. I was just this picture here. No, let's go back on this one. I know that's, you mentioned that this is 2024, but the last in Tokyo, where Zafaris, she got the spot, and this is something that I think is very notable about the whole idea of resilience, that through the setbacks, through the disappointments, and then continue to stay the course, the injuries, sicknesses, and things. This is that aspect of that character. And what might you speak into what you know of Taylor? Seeing her, even, does it surprise you as to how she navigated through this difficult period?
Yeah, I'm happy to digress on that. So coming up to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, the selection process is nuanced. And so the maximum number of athletes any one country can potentially have on their team for the Olympics in triathlons, men or women, it's the same number for each, is 3. And that number, they have to have a certain number of points before they can even be considered. I forget what it is. You have to have at least 3 in order to qualify 3 athletes, you would need 3 athletes minimum in the top like 20 or 30 in the world rankings in order for you to qualify 3 athletes. Well, Team USA typically, they are some of the best performing triathletes, and they typically automatically qualify 3 places. The selection process is a whole different thing. So each country has a different policy for how they're going to qualify their Olympic selections. And coming into 2020, they would have 3. And sometimes they'll pick and select a particular race. And if that is a designated race where you end up on the podium, then you quote unquote auto select for the team. So coming into the 2020 Olympics, Summer Rappaport had a great race at this one race, and she auto selected for the team. And there were still 2 open spots. And Taylor looked like she'd be a really good candidate for one of those spots, as Katie Safaris as well. Then the pandemic hit. The Olympics were put on hold for a year. And during that time, another Taylor Knibb, came onto the scene. And she ended up, they rearranged the qualification process. And Taylor Knibb ended up getting another auto select position on the team based on her result at a race. So, and the only reason she was in the mix was because the Olympics had been delayed a year because of the pandemic. So now they've had two athletes auto select. And so it came down to one more position. And my Taylor was performing really well. And she was outperforming Katie Safaris, who was the world champion the year before. And it came down to a committee picking that third selection, and they picked Katie over Taylor. And that was an extremely difficult time for her.
Wow.
Because most people recognize that Taylor deserved it more than Katie. But Katie was the previous world champion. Her father had passed away, and she had gone through some challenges. Her husband, Tommy, by the way, is a photographer. He's a great guy. He was a former triathlete, a professional triathlete. He's a photographer for World Triathlon and very well known in the community. And in any event, Katie got the nod and Taylor didn't. And then what was difficult, we talked about it a lot, even about what is the process to contest that. And it's an uphill battle, and not a fight that was really worth contesting. So I just said, look, you're just going to have to accept this. I don't think it's fair, but take the high road on this. And so then to add insult to injury, they asked her to be on the as an alternate, because they take two alternates, or they might take four. They might take two men and two women as alternates in case one of the athletes at the games gets hurt or injured or ill, especially during the pandemic. So then she had to go to Japan, and because it was the pandemic, they just basically put her in a hotel room the whole time, and she couldn't leave because it was the pandemic. She couldn't go to the Olympic Village. She couldn't see anyone. She was dating another triathlete at the time who was on another team, and so she had to stay in her hotel room that whole time. But you know what? She did it, and she never complained about it. And she always took the high road with that decision. She came out of that, and she continued to consistently perform. She is the most consistent finishing triathlete over the past several years in the World Triathlon Series competition level. She's been ranked number one. She was ranked number four, and it's just because of her durability. She's just a remarkably consistent, durable athlete.
What did you see that in her as a child, or was there any common kind of thread that,
It's funny you mentioned that. She was always very determined. Whatever she set her mind to, she was very determined, whether it was her studies, whether it was having to get up at 5 and go to water polo practice in December. But one thing always stands out in my mind about just how competitive and her stick-to-itiveness is. And we have this event here in the summer. It's actually coming up. I'll be in Paris watching her race, but they have what's called the International Surf Festival. And it's a combination of lifeguard competitions and then some competitions for local people. And there's a 2-mile peer-to-peer swim that we've had here forever. It's called the peer-to-peer, and you start on one side of the Hermosa Pier and you swim 2 miles and finish on the other side of the Manhattan Beach Pier.
Oh, they go reverse now, huh? It started at Manhattan a long time ago now.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the event. And so one year she would compete in it, and one year I took her down there, and I would start at the beginning, and then I'd walk up the beach while they're swimming, and I walk up to Manhattan Beach to watch her come out of the water, and she's coming around the pier with just one other female athlete. a woman much older than her, but a very good open water swimmer. She was also an LA County lifeguard. She's won life-saving national championships. And they were coming around the pier to come up and basically you've got to come out of the water and run up the sand. Well, the other woman, Diane, he caught a wave. And so she caught a wave, and so she ended up beating Taylor. But I was just so over the moon that she was finishing second. I couldn't believe it. I mean, she's like a young little girl.
Yeah.
They're like the top. There's only like maybe 10 other males ahead of them. And
Wow.
so she runs up the beach, and I see her, and I'm going, "Oh my God, Taylor, that's so good! You did so good! I can't believe it! You got second." And she looked at me, Brian, and she just burst out crying. Oh my God! Just it's not fair. She caught a wave. It's not race. And I just had to laugh under my breath. I go, well, there's the competitive spirit right there.
Oh, man.
It, pretty pretty remarkable that she was not going to settle for second place. She will
Yeah.
never settle for second place. That she's got this iron will. She is just so determined, and and then the next year she ended up finishing fourth overall. There were only three men that beat her.
Wow. God.
And then so they have this competition with lifeguards called the Taplin, and
Yeah.
it's a big honor tradition. And there's different LA County lifeguard sections that compete against each other. The LA County lifeguards are consistently the best national life-saving competitors in all the United States. There's a pocket. There's some in New Jersey, some in Florida, some in Texas, but primarily the LA County lifeguards, they dominate.
Yeah.
So we have this relay. It's called a taplin, and they start with trying to think of what they start with, but it involves four different disciplines. It's surf ski, it's paddling, it's dories, and it's swimming. And the southern section picked her several years out of men or women to be one of their swimmers because she was that good. And so that was like a huge honor. But that just goes to show you how determined she is.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is awesome, man. Yeah. And so it's kind of like here's the contrast of, just what you explained, you just shared us her as a child and those characteristics and her today.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And so what was the back what was this before she knew she made the team or
This was the test race last year. So that's Taylor Nibbs, and then my Taylor,
Mhm.
and I think that's Seth Ryder, isn't it? I think so.
I'm not
Uh,
sure. Not sure. Okay.
and so they were there to do the test race last year. And of course, the test race last year, the water quality wasn't up to snuff. So they turned it into a duathlon. So they didn't even get to swim last year in the sand.
Oh, wow. Do you know what the water conditions what it's going to be like at
Well, it's looking good now. Um, I know that it's certainly a great media talking point. Uh,
Mhm.
I know that France has invested $1.4 billion into making sure the river is
Wow.
uh, swimmable. It hasn't been swimmable in over 100 years.
Sheesh.
There's a lot of focus and certainly they wanted to showcase the city with the triathlon. So barring maybe some unexpected rainstorm that would create a lot of runoff, I think that they'll have the swim. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so these are which races are these that you're
The test, yeah.
oops.
Uh, so that's Paris because that's over one of those bridges with the gold.
Oh, okay. Yep, yep, yep. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
so that's Paris. The other one's Paris up there on the Champs Elysees.
Hmm. Yep.
Um,
So as we're kind of coming to a close on this here, So we just put this mosaic here where it kind of the celebrating her making the team and just kind of seeing the beginning stages and anything you want to kind of speak into this that which now will then begin to start giving some context about the shirt, but anything you want to speak into this, looking at this kind of review of her life and where she's at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So the interesting thing for me is because I am, uh, I'm a devoted follower to all of her races. I've traveled all over the world to watch her race. I've seen her race in Abu Dhabi, Hamburg, Bermuda, Edmonton, Montreal, the UK. So, I have a clear understanding of where she fits into that elite level of triathlons. But because it's not something that's very, um, um, there's no focus or awareness on that level of racing here in the United States. It is in other parts of the world, but she's already like this incredible champion in my eye. But when you make the Olympics, everything changes. It's
Wow.
didn't really understand that until she made the selection. We were really pretty sure she was going to make the selection, but until they formally announced it, and they kind of delayed it. And then she sent me a text one morning, and she let me know she had made it, but don't say anything because they haven't told some of the other athletes who haven't made it that they haven't made it. And then once the announcement was out there, um, all of a sudden people know who she is, and like a local paper wrote a huge article about her, and people that I don't even know have come up and congratulated me, and,
Mm.
and it's just like a really super exciting time right now because
Yeah. I mean, what is it like for you as a father? I mean, just like explain the emotion to a dad's like.
yeah, well, I was already kind of one of her number one fans, but remember, I have that context. I know triathlons. I came
Yeah,
from triathlons. I understand what she's doing.
yeah,
So I have that additional kind of reference point.
yeah.
But it's yeah, I've been kind of on cloud nine for the last
I'm
month.
sure, yeah.
I just, I just am so filled with warmth and happiness, and I honestly would rather be a father of an Olympian than an Olympian. I think there's much more value and benefit in it, and it's just a super exciting time. And mind you, she lives in Europe, so
Yeah.
uh, I don't see her that often. We communicate often, but communication's challenging with someone in Europe. It's a 9 hour time difference.
Mhm.
So we've still stayed connected, and I kind of knew she would make the team, but I was nervous about accommodations. So Shannon and I, we made accommodations. And I was always very superstitious. I didn't want to jinx her making the selection.
Uh-huh.
So we got our place that we're staying in before she actually got the selection,
Mm.
and and then I made this decision to really celebrate it by making the T-shirt. And I want to share something anecdotally. Is the person who printed this T-shirt is Marcel Hoxbergen, who's still one of my dear friends. He was on Team NTTC with Bonnie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
And so he does printing, T-shirt printing for a business, promotional printing, like high quality stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he was the one that actually printed it.
Uh-huh.
That's a picture of her at Cagliari this past not too long ago. And so I just said I want to do a friends and family T-shirt and put it out there to people who might want it and people that somehow have a connection to me or to her.
Uh-huh.
So real quick, one of them, Daniel, he's manager of Helen's Bike Shop. He's taking care of her since she started riding her bike. Um, Charlie Brown, right next to you in the lower left-hand corner. One of my first friends that I made when I started training for triathlons,
Uh-huh.
uh, Hawthorne Pool,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
did 10-man races together.
Uh-huh.
he lives up in Washington. So she went and did he lives now in Washington. When she went and did her Manson race, we stayed with him. Chad is my trainer. Still, I have a trainer. He's the one in the garage holding it up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There's my mom. That's from yesterday. I dropped off that T-shirt for her, and she lives in a retirement home.
Uh-huh.
This is David Wells. That's him announcing the Manhattan Beach Grand Prix bike race a couple of weeks ago. He's a big fan of hers.
Uh-huh.
And then next to him is Bill, who's got me on this triathlon team. He's the president of Saban Films. And he and I have we've ran all around the world together and done all kinds of fun stuff. And then Greg here in the lower right-hand corner is the guy I've been riding with for 20 years, who is one of her AOS soccer coaches.
Really? Wow. That's awesome. Yeah.
So it's been fun. I've hand delivered a lot of these T-shirts, which made it kind of more special because the people that really wanted it and are excited, and they're equally excited as she's part of their family too, and that just really touches my heart, you know.
Yeah, that is so awesome. And so, as kind of a coming to a close here, this picture of the symbolism here. Here she's kissing you on the cheek.
I'm really good at embarrassing her at races. So that was Montreal, and we arrived and we hadn't seen her, and then she was across the way back where that guy in the red jersey is by that bike, and I yelled, Taylor, and she was embarrassed. She said, Dad, no, I see you. I'm always embarrassing her at races because I'd be taking pictures and and then she finally came over there and she was sweet and nice and that's me giving her a kiss. So.
Yeah, I know. No matter how old they get, they're always embarrassed when we make them.
Oh yeah, I'm good at embarrassing her for sure.
Yeah. So this is kind of like the last picture, and so for a couple of things to the father. This is a very special moment, and not every father has this experience that you have. But but to speak into a father has their young child, and I mean, what would you encourage that father to be? What has been kind of your way you've approached fatherhood that you would encourage them today?
Well, there always has to be structure and boundaries, but there always was with Taylor, and I was very adamant about her performing in school, no matter what. That's just my own personal value system. I thought it was very important for her to have that education, just regardless of the athletics, and I told her I would support her in whatever things that she wanted to experiment with, whether they were, like I said, the arts or whether it was sports. And I never pushed her or forced her to do any sports, but if she embraced it, then I was all in. I said, sure, let's see how this goes, and some of them didn't really pan out too much, but they were a lot of fun. The soccer was fun. We enjoyed winter sports a lot. And I think the most important thing is, and I kind of touched on this before, is you still need to be, you're a guide, you're a parent. If you recognize that this isn't going, like I said, to end up being a career pathway, then you can still have fun with the sports, but you don't want to put too much emphasis on it because it's the chance that the athlete's going to turn out to be a world-class athlete. The odds are against you. And that's just being realistic. Did I ever think in a million years that I'd be sitting here talking to you about my daughter going to the Olympics? No, I mean, it is pretty remarkable. However, I know how hard she's been on this path for 10 years. So in as much as someone who doesn't really know that it seems like an overnight thing, she really earned this. She really focused and dedicated herself to this. And what I noticed with her, and I think it might have something to do with kind of the message I tried to plant with her, is when I asked her how long she wants to do this, she said, "Well, as long as my body holds up and it's still fun, you know." And and I think that's a good mindset. Is you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. There's more to life than just this, and you can still be athletic and have a healthy, active, fit lifestyle, uh, and not have to compete at a world class level. You know,
Yeah.
I think you need balance in life, no matter what it is. You need to balance everything out. Having come from a family where she had two parents who were athletic, I thought it was much easier thing for her to kind of embrace, but I never pushed it, I guess maybe by example, because I'm still athletic, like I said, I did a triathlon yesterday. I have a couple other things I wanted to do this year too that are athletic related, and that's the beauty of life, is you can still be healthy and active and compete. What was the greatest thing yesterday? I've been around bike racing a long time. Bike racing is a whole different mentality, and not everyone's friendly. I was at this triathlon yesterday. It was the most warmest vibe. I forgot how nice everyone is at triathlon, because it's about the experience. It's about being there and just participating, you know. And I think that's right. And then it's funny. I was texting some of my cycling friends, and what's the first thing they want to know? How did you do? What was your result?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's all they care. Like, did you, it was Sean and Sean did very well. And so then I dug through my results, and I had a pretty good bike time, and I was the fastest swimmer. I swam once. I got in a pool one time last weekend for 45 minutes at open lap swim at Redondo Beach High School, just to make sure I could swim.
Oh
And
man.
I borrowed a wetsuit. It wasn't a long, 750 meters, but I ended up being faster than the other relay teams that I was part of. So,
That is awesome.
when I was on that bike, it was on out there, and I didn't use a time trial bike because I knew by the time the relay got out there that there would be so many people I'd have to maneuver around. So I played around I hadn't been on my TT bike in a long time, and I go, I feel a little squirrely and awkward. I'm not going to be able to stay down the drops. So I just opted to go with my road bike, which was a really smart decision. But once I was on there, I was throwing down. I was going as hard as I could, and I passed so many people. I passed a lot of people down on their TT drops too.
Oh God.
So she just might get a little bit of that competitive spirit from me.
Yeah, that is funny. That is funny, man. Well, with ending this, what would you like to say to Taylor as she's ready to compete on that day, on that race day? Kind of speaking in the future tense. I mean, what would you like her to know in that moment?
Well, Team USA reached out and asked if we wanted to uh, send a card or a note for them to have in the Olympic Village when they got there. So I did take some time to think, and I wrote out a long card, and I um,
Without saying that, with that special moment, maybe add to that,
yeah, well, you
personal.
know I'm so proud, and she's just a genuinely wonderful person, and I couldn't be happier as a parent for her to to turn out the way she has. She's I always say this. I could have been that same parent as a kid, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, but as a parent, you've got to put in that effort. You got to know at least you've done everything you can to contribute and prop that child up on a pathway towards the best possible outcomes in life, you know, and for her to reach this milestone is just beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, I can't imagine it. You know, I get emotional just thinking about it. You know, she's she's a wonderful person. She's an amazing athlete, and I'm just so proud of her as a parent. It doesn't matter how she does. You know, I have my own ideas of how things might play out, but you know, this is the Olympics, and there's a lot of really talented athletes.
Yeah.
She has two chances to medal. There's the individual, and then there's the mixed relay. I think she has a better chance of medaling as part of the mixed relay team. But anything can happen.
That's right. Well, Marc, thanks for this very special moment and so much. Just it's been inspiring just to kind of hear a little of that backstory, and I'm sure that those that are viewing this are going to be inspired themselves. And so, you know, on behalf of just supporting your daughter, Spivey. So
right back here too. That this was from somebody gave it to her in Japan and made it. It says Taylor Spivey. I have that there too.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, Marc, hey man, thanks so much, and I look forward to being able to meet her sometime, and hopefully that we'll be able to maybe post Olympics that we'll be able to have a dad and daughter talk. You know?
Yeah. So I real quick. So after the Olympics, she's doing 2 Super League races. She's coming here. She's coming to Chicago,
Okay.
and then Boston. And then in October, she's contracted to do T100 races. So she's going to do Las Vegas in October. So we're going to watch her race that. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. All right. Well, Marc, thanks so much. And I'm going to end this recording, and then we'll talk offline. All right. All right, man.
Thanks so much, Brian. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.